So I've been coming and doing as much research as I can on Dune Awakening, which is supposed to be a survival crafting MMO based in the universe of Dune, written by Frank Herbert. The whole idea of this game seems really exciting, especially being set in that universe, one that I absolutely love. I'm even going as far as into the depths to read the book itself and compare it to the actual cinematography that was given to it recently. This MMO has the chance to be one of the best MMOs out there. Let's be serious. Most traditional games that are set in an MMO setting, such as World of Warcraft, such as Final Fantasy XIV, they have been there for a very long time, and they've kept their player base, and they've attracted newer players, we'll say, in that same fashion. Very seldomly do we have a new MMO step out into the light, and even less one that can land successfully. I mean, it took New World a couple of years to actually get into we'll say, a better positive respect in comparison to other MMOs. So I'm going to go ahead and explain everything that we know thus far about Dune Awakening and try to get a better heading of what this game is going to be like. Now, I want you to go ahead and hit the like and subscribe button because this is something that I'm going to follow up with, and I do intend on playing the hell out of it upon release, so just hang in there with me. I'll give you as much information and up-to-date topics as I can. First, let's go ahead and talk about the company that is producing the game, and that company is Funcom. You might know Funcom from their long endeavor experience with the Conan Exile series, which is another crafting survival game. Now, mostly it has positive reviews and a dedicated fan base, although some people may not necessarily trust on the delivery of Funcom, so this creates kind of an interesting dynamic. Now, personally, I don't have as much experience with Funcom, so I can't speak to it other than what I've seen as far as anecdotal evidence. However, I will say that given that the Dune Universe and the title Dune, we'll say the brand, is a very popular one, it is considered one of the more masterfully done sci-fi pieces, I would be interested to see how they handle the delivery of this game. Now, personally, I think that they can do it. I think that they are taking the necessary steps to research the topic, research the atmosphere and the universe, and deliver a game that is, we'll say, akin to what can be expected. Now, let's be certain, every time that there is a game release, no matter how well it's received, there's always that one person who's like, I don't like it because it isn't what I thought it should be. You're not going to please everyone. So I do give them the grace with that. But given their experience with Conan Exiles and their handling of this title of Dune, I think that they can do a pretty good job. They went ahead and actually worked with Shiro Games to create Dune Spice Wars, which is an RTS based in the Dune universe. And I've played that personally, and I really enjoyed it. It's a good game, and they kept a lot of the lore-friendly things and a lot of the topics, everything that you would expect to see from the Dune universe within that game. So that is very, very good. They kept it true to that. Now, of course, there's always going to be a different iteration. It isn't probably going to be exactly, we'll say, word for word from the book or the movie into the game, because that doesn't necessarily always translate to a good user experience. However, there is quite a bit of positive that they can do with this. So I'm reluctantly excited, I think is the best way to put it. I think they can do it. I think that they can put it together. But Funcom is leading the helm, and from what we've seen thus far, they are putting together a good game. And not to even mention that they're working with Legendary Pictures, who have done the more recent Dune 1 and 2, Part 1 and Part 2. They are assisting with this using certain assets and, we'll say, pictures and models based from those movies into an iteration into the game. So that's good. They're not just laser focused staying with one particular topic. They're reaching out and branching into these different areas to draw in experience from other, we'll say, production companies. That's a good sign, just saying. Now, let's go ahead and talk about classes. So there really hasn't been too much information on classes per se. However, in a Dune Awakening Direct episode, the first one that recently came out, creative director Joel Blios, and I'm probably saying that wrong, has indicated that the way that classes are going to work is in that sense when you create your character, you follow a certain discipline, a mentor or mastery of some sort. And then as you are out experiencing the world of Dune, you can visit other specific trainers or mentors, as he called it, and learn different disciplines, which are going to have different skills. Now, what exactly does that look like? We really don't know. What I would venture a guess off of this is that you would learn your specific mastery. Let's say, for example, you choose an engineering mastery, which gives you access to being able to use rifles and we'll say flamethrowers and other tech items and various gadgets. But then you can visit other mentors who are out in the world and gain their trust, which is an aspect. You can't just walk up and say, hey, can you mentor me? No, that's not how it's going to work. You're going to have to earn their trust, which I'm guessing means you got to do a couple of quests. You have to earn it in some way and then become a mentee for that particular discipline. That seems like a really cool interchangeable thing that you can do. And then you can have, like, I guess, like these certain masteries. Like, you could focus wholly onto engineering, it sounds like, and that be your primary focus. Or you could split off and join the Bene Gesserit and, you know, become a voice user, things like that. It seems like there's going to be a lot of interchangeability with all of this. So what we know right now is that the classes are going to be just kind of like a discipline mentor type thing, and then you can expand from there. For example, one of the skills that have been utilized, or I should say perhaps a discipline, is the Mentat. Now the Mentat use an ability that allows you to see through walls and see everything that's all around you, which is actually really cool. You can use it almost as like a UAV from Call of Duty. That means that you can see the enemies, you know where they are, and you can see their outlines and everything. So that's really interesting in my mind, because say you're attacking a base, an enemy base, you use that ability, now you and your allies can see all the enemies within that zone. That's cool. Now, one that I'm not 100% on, like if it's going to be a part of a class or perhaps a skill, an ability that you can use, is the use of suspensor belts, gravity suspensor belts, which help you kind of float and fly. Now, you see it in the showcase, and I don't know necessarily if that's just going to kind of be a baseline item or a baseline skill that everyone can use, or it might be only for, you know, like an engineering or a craftsman, we'll say, class. I'm not quite sure how that's going to work, but there are these different aspects that I could see being a skill. So right now, that's about the extent of the quote-unquote classes that you could use, or I would say disciplines that you'll be able to follow. But now, what's the point of having all these really cool skills and abilities in these classes, per se, if there's no combat? Joel went on to talk about the 4 categories right now. And again, this could just be passive sentence, or this could actually be the outline of how combat will be. He says that there's melee, ranged, skills, and vehicle. Now, we've seen vehicle, of course, and ranged already in a lot of the trailers. You see a lot of that happening anyway, either between the ground tanks or the ornithopters and all these different things that are occurring while you're in combat. So there seems to be a lot of different levels, and we'll say tiers of combat. So of course you could have your melee combatants, and then maybe perhaps you have like a trooper who uses a rifle primarily and assaults at range. Or perhaps you could even say there's going to be a skill user who, again, I bring up, you know, voice users, and then go from there, and like they're compelling enemies towards you so that you could stab them, or, you know, things like that. And then, of course, the vehicle combat, which is exactly as it sounds, vehicle combat. Now, it does seem like the combat can be changed and modified, but I'll cover that here into the crafting, especially when we talk about the vehicles. But then again, why are we fighting? So we have the abilities to fight, we have the different styles of fighting, but why do we need to fight? Well, that comes in with the survival aspect. So if you have an entire game that is based around being on this desert wasteland of a planet with all these constant threats looming in the darkness or under the sand, it really begs the question, why are we doing this? What are we fighting for? What are we fighting over? So of course, first and foremost, Joel has made the biggest point to say that you are going to be first fighting for water. Of course, with any type of survival game, there's going to be that real big push to make sure that you have you know, the basic necessities to live. Usually it's like food, shelter, warmth, you know, things along those lines. But then in Dune Awakening, it looks like water is probably going to be one of the most valuable resources that you can have, if not the most, for your survival, which makes sense. Ideally, the way that you are surviving with this water is that you are finding either, you know, plants that you can get the dew from off of in the morning, and you could even eat those plants to get some of the fiber and the moisture that's in there. However, eating too much of them could also like make you sick, which will cause you to dehydrate. So it's like this risk versus reward type thing. And then on top of that, they have things like dew collectors, they have wind turbines, everything, all these various levels of way of getting water, at least that they're hinting at or they showed in their showcases. Joel has also mentioned drinking the blood of your enemies. That is wild. That is so cool. It's like that really cool way to show the intensity or propensity, I think is the best way to say it, of survival that you need to show. You need to almost be ruthless and savage to survive on Arrakis. And I think that might be part of their driving force of why they are building this universe the way that they are. Now, other things would make sense. Of course, you would definitely need food, you would need shelter, a place to rest, things along those lines. But something that I could see them implementing into the game is a sun gauge. You can't be out in the sun for too long, and it overheats either your suit or it puts you into a bad way, which, you know, like I could definitely see that being a very important aspect of this game, and that could be another thing that you have to track while you're trying to survive here on this planet. But again, that's just me speculating. I don't have any proof of that. I just think that that would be a cool kind of speculation to say for this game. And lastly, one that I could see, but I don't know necessarily if that would be an initial problem, is spice. So if you don't know, in the world of Dune, spice is life. It is one of the most, if not the most, valuable resources in this entire universe. It's the whole reason people are even really on Arrakis, is to get the spice. Now, if you have prolonged exposure to the spice, it changes you. It actually almost causes you to withdraw if you're too far away from it. Now, I could definitely see as you going and gathering this spice from Dune, and then you're turning it and selling it, but you have grown to be addicted to it. And as you get more addicted to it, if you don't get any more, your character could die through withdrawal. Like that's another layer of survival. So again, risk versus reward, because you could sell the spice, make a crap load of money, right? Or you could keep it and keep yourself alive. So like, I like the way that they're setting that up. That is something. Now, again, this is just kind of off of following some of the lore, some of the conversations. This hasn't necessarily been solidified, but I could definitely speculate that that is probably going to be something that is influenced later in the game. If not, I think I'd kind of be disappointed, but I think it would be really, really cool if they did it right. So of course, crafting and building tend to be one of the main exciting points for a lot of players who come into a survival crafting MMO. And I won't even say an MMO, just a survival crafting game in general. Now, what's interesting to know about the crafting here in this game is that we really haven't heard much of, right? We haven't really heard too much. I haven't been able to find any, or I should say much information aside from crafting is going to have a very big part. Now, crafting could eventually mean you crafting your own ornithopter or your own tank or your sand cycles or whatever vehicles you have. I could also see armor, weapons, you know, cosmetics that go for your base, things like that. I could definitely see all those, but we haven't really heard much from it. We've seen some things in the trailers, which look pretty cool, but the only thing that I will say that I've noticed at least, or I picked up, was the way that crafting goes. And if you're crafting and say you're building an ornithopter, what they've mentioned is that you can modify the ornithopter to, for example, carry vehicles. That's what it said in this particular trailer. Now, what's interesting to note from that is that venture a guess and expand out further and say, okay, they might also be able to modify your suits. You might also be able to modify your weapons, modify all these different things to suit the kind of playstyle that you want to have. Now, if you have like your ornithopter and it's able to carry vehicles, I'm willing to bet that you can modify your ornithopter to also be essentially an Apache helicopter that is loaded to the teeth with weaponry. I can see that. That's not too far of a guess for me to venture. But as of right now, there really isn't all that much information that we have on the crafting. Conversely, on the building aspect of things, we actually do have quite a bit of information. So it seems like a lot of the individual items are all independent of each other, meaning that you could essentially build a house however you want. There's not like, it doesn't seem like there's these square pegs that you have to fit them in, and then if you go to select it there, it fits within that square. At least that's what we have been told. And again, we're still in closed beta, so we still have a little bit of time before anything's solidified even further. Oh, those NDAs are kicking our ass. But the idea of it is that you can individually place each one of these, we'll say, items, these pictures, these things within your base, however you wish to put it, which is cool. I like the freedom of design here. But then also you can set up blueprints of what you want. So say you and your friends are building a base and you have a layout of how you want to do it. You can set up holographic layouts of what you want. And then as you get the materials, as you and your friends gather what you need, you can build it out and they can see it all in real time. That's pretty cool. That's something that I like, and especially if we're going to be talking about an MMO that is in this fashion, you're going to want to have that kind of talk that will say, I want to be able to place this here, this here, this here, and then your friend's able to jump in and be like, okay, well, I got that piece. Let me get that one over there. I like that. That's really cool. Another aspect about the building, which is I do want to mention, is Joel has talked about the way that you can create in Conan Exiles, and he mentioned how people are building like the Taj Mahal in that game. Wouldn't it be really cool if you could take the blueprints of that and then sell it to someone else? So you spend a lot of time creating this massive building, this base that you really, really like. Wouldn't it be cool if you could take the blueprints, sell it to another player so they could go ahead and do it on their own? Well, that seems to be one of the focuses that they'd like to have in this game. They'd like to have a way that you can sell the blueprints of whatever your base is or your building, whatever you want, and you could sell it to other players who can then go recreate it somewhere else. That's pretty cool. That drives not only player economy, especially if you have those really build heavy type players who are in this game. They can make their own money. They don't always have to venture out on, like missions and combat and stuff. They can just do what they do and still be able to play the game. I like that. That's pretty cool. Now, putting it in the perspective of the environment of Arrakis, of course, it's going to be this harsh wasteland, which they're utilizing Unreal Engine to create this world, which is really cool because, of course, everything looks beautiful and there's a lot of these different moving parts that all look really well put together. Like, for example, they have a day and night cycle. They have these light rays that are coming in that are just absolutely beautiful. So if you guys have those really, really premium graphics cards, you're able to put those to good use and you can get a lot of worth out of this game just for the beauty of it. Now, aside from that, it seems like there is going to be a mix of trading posts, safer areas, and then like deep desert. There's going to be a lot of different biomes that are included, or at least that have been mentioned. And these do seem to play somewhat into what I would imagine would be middle to late game of Dune Awakening, but I'll cover that here in a second. But these specific biomes are out and about and they have their own resources and they could have their own NPCs. And I'm curious if like you go ahead and get into that particular biome, can you like take control of it and make it into your base? We're not quite sure, but they are out there, and that is something that has been confirmed, that they're going to be out and doing their own thing. And paired with that, which is actually pretty cool, is like the environment will constantly be changing. They've mentioned an aspect called shifting sands, which on a weekly reset, it's like a giant sandstorm comes through and changes the entire face of the game. And it says in all PvP areas, but I think it would be really cool if everything gets kind of changed in that regard. Now, I don't know necessarily how that would go for characters who are, or players who are just focusing on their one giant base. That'd be kind of like crappy. You come back and it's completely gone, but I could see it in these kind of non-building areas where it's like there's these different biomes and, you enter into the deep desert and it's something completely new. I could see that being more reasonable. And what's even cooler about that is that sometimes it will erase what was there, and you can no longer access those biomes that were there last week, but it opens up new treasures and new places for you to go and explore this week. That is awesome. That adds that fresh level of, well, what happened this week? Let's go and check this out. Let's go in there and see what there's to see. I like that. I think that's a really cool feature. And on top of that, of course, they have the real-time events. So Sandstorms, which is an ever-present threat. Sandworms, which honestly, I'm going to talk about them here in a minute. They're going to have their own little section at the end. There's a lot going on with them, which of course you would expect that. Another aspect that they have shown is a spice blow or spice bellow, something like that. High pressure amount of spice that just explodes up into the air. And it seems almost like it's a real-time event that as this is happening, you'll see it from, a great distance away, and you know that there's a lot of spice over there to collect. And it's kind of like a dinner bell. Now you have all these people rushing over there, players, NPCs, to gather up the spice, and then it becomes open world conflict. So it's almost like a draw in risk versus reward. Do you go in and get all the spice that you can, or do you just hang back and let everyone fight for it and then jump in at the end? There's this dynamic that goes to it. That's pretty cool. I like that feature as far as like the world building, because of course spice being the most advantageous resource here on Arrakis, you're going to want to make sure that you guys are collecting that. First steps into the game are going to be brutal, which you would expect for an MMO that is based in Dune, in the world of Dune on Arrakis. So your first steps are going to be survival, like let's find water, let's find shelter. But Joel has already indicated that your first couple of steps are going to be immediately haunted by a sandworm attack. And it's only a juvenile. It's not a ringmouth. It's not one of the bigger ones. It is just a baby sandworm that's chasing you, which is, of course, the general size of 15 Boeing 747s. Now, what's interesting about this is that this creates that dynamic. This creates the tension right out the gate. There's no hiding where you are and what's going to happen. It's just more so, oh crap, now we got to deal with it. One of the bigger problems that Joel has talked about, especially as you get into endgame with most survival games, is that there's less to do. Once you have survived and you've kind of reached your top, I lived, what now? Well, Joel and the team for Dune Awakening has the idea that they want to transition away from survival, we'll say, a game or an open world survival game to a political survival game. Is as you grow in power, as you become more prominent within the archetype of Dune, or I should say the political world of Dune, you will then have the capabilities of growing that way and dealing with the War of Assassins and all the other houses that are a part of the Dune universe. So Atreides, Harkonnen, Carino, things along those lines. You're going to have to deal with all of them while you are still surviving for your own and doing what you need to. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that you have to. That is something that Joel has said. Of course, it's a crafting survival MMO. If all you want to do is build your base and stick to yourself, that is something that you can do. However, they've also indicated that, strength in numbers is a very real thing here. So you're going to want to play with other players and also grow with them. So there seems to be quite a bit of capabilities across the board. If you really want to wrest control and become the governor of Dune, then that is something that you can do. You can take control over Dune. Or if you just want to just hang out and do what you need to, you can. But something that I had mentioned earlier as far as why we would go out to like these different biomes, it seems like the gameplay is going to function off of certain contracts that you'll be able to take and accept and deal with. So a contract might be, go to this biome and assassinate, this NPC. Okay, well now you have to go and you and your friends have to go and fight through all these enemies to get to him, to kill him. Or it could be go and steal this item or capture this, this base or relieve or save these people. There's going to be these different things that are going along. And again, the style of missions, I'm just throwing out there. That's what I would expect as far as a speculation would go. But I will say that these contracts seem like they are going to be a mid to late game type thing that you'll be able to play and to do. And it seems that there's always something to do. So there's probably going to be daily and weekly contracts that you and your friends can go ahead and get. And you guys can push for heavier and bigger things to take down. So the sky's really the limit of where they can take this. but there has been talks and confirmation that there will be some type of contract play into the game. So, of course, you're on Dune, and, you know, they literally have the War of Assassins. So, you know, kind of makes sense. So one of the coolest things about the Dune universe, and one of the biggest spectacles that everyone likes to see in this game, is sandworms. And you're going to see it in this game. You've seen it on the movies. Sandworms are this ever constant threat. And I'm quoting here, they want them to be the tension of your survival. Is it worth risking getting eaten by a sandworm, going out there and doing whatever you need to do? That is always what they want to keep in the back of your mind. And then, and in this game, there's no way that you can kill a sandworm, right? Which is fantastic. You don't want to have an out. Your only option is to run. Play smart and run from these ginormous creatures that are going to just eat you and your base and everything if you're dumb. Basically, if you're dumb. But I like the idea of a tension mechanic for this game, because if you don't have this constant threat, it doesn't matter how good of a Dune player you are. You could be, you know, the best assassin or the best marksman and stuff like that. But if you're dumb, you're still going to get eaten by a sandworm. Now, it seems like you're going to have these different ways to get away from them. So trying to outrun them, running onto rocks and staying on there, using a thumper to distract them while you get away. These are all possibilities. But it's interesting to note specifically how they plan on putting this into the game and why they were doing it. Now, of course, I mentioned that they do the smaller worms in kind of like the more local areas, the little ones, but then they have the giant ringmouth ones, which are further out into the deep desert, which again, there goes that idea of risk versus reward. That's what they're at least planning on doing. Is the juice worth the squeeze for you to go out there and risk your life for these things, for these items that you're after, or these resources, at the threat, the constant threat of a sandworm attack? What they've also said about the sandworms is that unfortunately the sandworm riding is not going to be available at release. That is something that could potentially come out later, but as of right now, it just doesn't seem like it's going to be on the table, which is I'm okay with. As long as they do the sandworms correctly and they do it in a way that is not only fun but like stressful. I need it to be stressful, because that's going to be fun for me. It's very rare a game can do that. I want to see that. So my final take is that currently Dune Awakening is shaping up to be a pretty good game. It looks like it's going to be a good game. There's still a lot of questions that I have. I don't usually jump on the hype train so super early, but this is one thing that I've been watching since its release, and I'm like, that is a game that I could find myself going all in and really enjoying the hell out of. So I'm cautiously optimistic of what they are doing and what they plan on. Now, they're still rolling these closed betas, and apparently they're opening more and more people into the beta as they get into later stages of development. But again, everything is blocked by an NDA, so we really don't know much, if not anything, I should say, about Dune Awakening other than what they have already shown us. But they have a lot of systems and a lot of different things that are promising. Now, will Funcom deliver on all of those? I don't know. I can't say for certain. I can't put my foot down and say, yep, this is going to be an absolute banger of a game. Could be a lot of fun. It could be the biggest upcoming MMO. I don't know. Right now, again, cautiously optimistic. I think they have a lot of things that they could do right, and it sounds like and looks like they are doing it. So we'll keep an eye out. And make sure, again, like and subscribe for this channel. I'm going to be keeping track of it as I get news. I will create videos on this. I'll toss out a couple speculation videos of things that I'm kind of hoping for, maybe a wish list or two. So make sure, like and subscribe. Do it now. In the meantime, I've been playing other MMOs. One of the other MMOs that I finally took a stab at was Final Fantasy XIV. After lots of time of people begging me to go ahead and get into the game, I finally jumped in, and I've been having a great time. You can follow along and see the whole playlist down in the description below, or right here. You can follow along with the journey, and it's a fun one. It's a little bit weird, but it's a good one. Aside from that, stay caffeinated, sleepers.